Hi guys, right, today's workshop is going to be quite an old painting, Owl and Moon. And we've got we've got our moon kind of on our thirds down here and on the thirds up here, so that's where we're going to start. And it's a real shame that you guys can't be in the same room as me, so I'm trying to recreate the experience as best as I can. So you guys are sitting over here and I've got my paint. I've got stretched paper today so that I can do it on an angle so that you guys can see as I'm painting. As always, there's a little bit of drawing to do to start with, but not very much. We're going to put in a circle for our moon, like that. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, a rough circle will do. And then I've got this white tree coming up the side, and I'm going to just mark in where that tree goes, because that's going to give me some indication as to where I put my owls. Okay, on the other side, I've got this tree coming up here and a branch, and my first owl is sitting on this branch, and he's kind of my main owl. If you get the moon and this owl in the right place, then everything else should work out. So he's got a little head, he's got sticky up ears, and that's my owl. I've then got a flying owl just below him, so I've got the mark of his wings and his fanned out tail. And then I've got this guy down here in this corner who looks like he's probably about to catch a mouse. So he's got his wings up, his sort of owly round head here, and he's got his legs sticking out in front of him, about to try and catch somebody for his dinner. One wing, two wings, and then his tail. This painting's got quite a lot of masking fluid on, so I can't find the masking fluid I normally use, so I've got this one. And I'm going to pour it out onto a plate. So at this point, that Broomhouse Farm are probably quite pleased I'm not painting in their shop and using all their crockery for things I'm not supposed to. So I've got it on a plate, and I'm just going to use the back of the brush to scoop it up, and this is my big tree. So what we're doing here is painting the trees, and I haven't really drawn them in. I've just got the two positions of the two main ones, and I'm just going to feel my way up. Always draw them from the bottom to the top, and with the back of the brush I can also do some really skinny branches sticking out. I've got another one coming up from this bottom corner. I can also use, I've got one of my business cards because it seems a bit rude to use somebody else's, and I can also use this to scrape and scoop my masking fluid up. Draw it up into the trees, and you can see that I'm getting some quite nice scratchy, natural, organic kind of shapes. I always find if you just use a paintbrush for this, you end up with really rigid, artificial looking brush marks. So wherever possible, particularly with masking fluid, because it tends to leave quite a stark line, I tend to try and use backs of brushes, bits of card, almost anything else really to put it on other than a brush. So here's my fourth tree going in, up here, right, so they're getting thinner and more sticky as they come up, fatter and wider at the bottom. Sounds obvious, but you guys will know it's very easy to forget that and to suddenly find you've got upside down trees. I've got a really big fat tree coming in from this side. Let's put that curved one. It's got a lovely curved shape on it, coming up, and right across. This one's coming right across this top of the page. I'm hoping that the creamy coloured masking fluid is going to show up on this video okay. I was hoping to find the blue masking fluid, which I know would have shown up, but the house, as you can imagine, is upside down with having 3 children at home all week. I can't find anything, but that won't come as a surprise to anyone. Just gives me an excuse not to be able to find anything. So I'm just carrying on putting these trees in, and I think once it starts to look quite full, then I think I'm going to stop. And one of the nice things about doing this painting is normally we have to do something that we can finish in an hour or 2 of painting. This one has quite a lot of drying time, so it's not one that I would normally be able to do at Broomhouse Farm, so that's quite a nice thing to do instead. I'm just splattering on here, so what I'm wanting is these little splatters are going to represent leaves and twigs and light, so that's going on as a splat. Also dipping my finger in, and this is going to be for the moon. So a nice round moon, because we want to be able to paint really wet and loose over the top of this. I'm also going to mask my owls. So there's the owl's body going, roll my sleeves up. There's the owl's body going in. What's going to make this one look like an owl is its sticky up ears. 1 ear, 2 ear, and the shape of his tail. He's got a roundy, fanny tail. And then I've got a branch that goes up to him, because otherwise he's going to be sitting on thin air. So make sure your owl is sitting onto something. And then I've got the owl in flight. He needs some frothy wings, up, 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 round body, out for the tail and his head. You do need to make sure that these are masked quite carefully, because it's going to be the paint that goes up to this masking fluid that leaves the strong shape. So it is worth taking just a little bit of care and a little bit of time. You might find, like I have, once I've put my trees in, actually this owl's in the wrong place. Don't worry, ignore your drawing and put him in where he needs to be. So I've got a nice gap between these trees. So I'm going to move my owl across, not worry too much about him. This is why I try and do as little drawing as possible, because as soon as I start painting, it's very easy to find you've got marks in the wrong place. So here's his body going in, and his little legs sticking out trying to catch a mouse. And there's his tail. And there's his wing feathers. Once you get to this point, there's nothing that you can do until it's dry. So what we're going to have to do now is just leave this to dry and come back in, go make a cup of tea or a gin and tonic, depending on what time of day you're having a go at this, and we'll come back to the painting. Right, when you think the masking fluid is dry, just touch it gently and it shouldn't come off on your fingers. Very important, because what you don't want to do is to get any of this masking fluid on your nice watercolour brushes. Now, what we're going to lay down next is a background wash. What we've got is a forest full of crinkly texture and scratchy trees and twigs and things, and I don't want to have to paint all of that, so partly what we're doing next is finding a way to create all that lovely texture without having to paint it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my page wet. So this is clean water, nearly clean, haven't changed it, nearly clean water right over the top. And I'm going to start dropping in my background colours. So this is where I need you guys, because I can never remember the names of my colours, and normally one of you shouts it out for me. So what have we got? We've got the cerulean blue, so that's going to go on first. That's a nice gentle blue. We start with our lighter colours, it's easier to drop our darker ones in afterwards. I'm then going to go in with a little bit of Naples yellow, and this is going to provide the yellowy light in this painting. I'm using it because it doesn't really turn green, So this colour is, I'm just going to drop some across where my owls are. Just a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to go in with my Payne's Grey, particularly around my moon. You can see it's all quite wet, so it's running and mixing and flowing. Obviously you'll be painting this flat, so it won't flow quite as much, but you'll be used to my paintings ending up on my feet when I do it like this. So I've got some dark blues coming in. This is French ultramarine coming in. And what I'm wanting is a patchwork of different colours. So I'm not going backwards and forwards over it. I'm letting the colours mix themselves on the paper. The more I go backwards and forwards over it, the more I'll turn it into a mush. So as we come up here, I'm dropping some purple in. I've got some purple, Windsor Violet. Yeah, there we go. And that's going to just follow that tree down. And same on this side. Into my blue, and then back into my grey again. So I have some grey up here. You can see I'm keeping this channel of light where the moon is, because I want that bit to look nice and smooth and glowing. So I'm slightly making it darker around the edges. Filling it all in, keep going round, and keep looking back at your picture to make sure there's a balance of colours. So I don't want all the purple on one side and all the grey on the other. I'm going back into all the different colours each side. I've also got a tiny little bit of burnt sienna, I think, in this, which might even be red, just to add a little bit of warmth. Just a little bit down that centre section. And around the edges, make sure I've got it all filled in. See how it's all still wet? That's quite important because the next stage relies on us having wet paint. So, and that's starting to look like I've got this light down the centre and my dark trees. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some bubble wrap. So I've got some bubble wrap here. I'm just going to tear into bits. And I'm going to put it down, bubble side down, and those bubbles are just going to leave spots. And I'm hoping that when I peel that off, it's going to start looking a little bit like tree leaves. And maybe a few down here. And then on top of the rest of it, I've got cling film. Always a challenge with cling film to get it to come off the roll. Where's Nigella when you need her? Here we go. Tear, hopefully. And I'm going to put this piece down this side. Now I'm being quite careful to leave the centre of my picture without any, because I want that section to look clear and clean. I want the texture around the edge. So that's one side done. And a little bit longer on this side. And let's scoop it round, 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 and press. Now press it on so that you can start to see the texture and pattern that it's going to leave when we peel it off. Right, so that's all there is to do for the minute. So it's another cup of tea or another gin and tonic time. Okay, thank you. Okay, so after about an hour or two, it depends how wet you've got it. I've had this on top of the cooker slowly drying out. Slowly peel it back. If the paint is still wet, you'll lose the marks. Make sure it's dry. And what you should find is you've got this gorgeous crinkly texture underneath. Peel that side so it's still slightly damp there, but I'm just really impatient. Even on camera, where I could wait as long as I liked, I still can't resist. Here we go, so you can see the spots that the bubble wrap has made in that corner, and the spots in that corner. Let's have a look up here. Yeah, so what we've got is some gorgeous background texture, which is going to help with the next bit. Okay, so I'm now going to start drawing some trees on top. I've got a couple of brushes. I've got a long skinny rigger brush and a little brush, and I'm going to use a mixture of these brushes. So I'm going to start with a strong mix of French ultramarine, and I'm going to ignore the trees I've got. I'm going to paint new trees, starting thick, coming up, and then switching to a smaller brush. Maybe add a little bit of Payne's grey into this to give it the depth of colour. And then as I reach the top, I'm going to switch again into the rigger. Press down and lift off. Press down and lift off. Press down and lift off. And this way, should be able to start to get some tree shapes. So always remember, paint from the bottom of the tree to the top. Always with things that are growing, paint in the direction that they grow. You can see on the bottom where it's slightly wet, I'm getting this nice fuzzy effect, quite like that. I'll drop some darks in on the far side of the moon. There's one tree in. Let's have another one coming in from over here on the far side. So press to get my deep, wide trunk. And as I come up, I'm lifting off. Press down, lift off. And again, I'm ignoring the masking fluid that's on there, because what I want is a crisscross of trees, so that when you look at it, there are ones in front, ones behind. You really feel that this is a thick forest full of trees, not a simple one single layer of trees. So again, let the rigger just dance over the paper, squiggle, 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 and build that tree up. And you can see it, all the spots up here are already starting to help with creating the effect of leaves. And remember, anything that's yellow, when I peel it off, is going to be white. It's going to be the paper that's underneath that shows up. Not all of these branches need to join up with other ones. Don't be afraid to start a branch as if it's coming out from between some plants. They don't all have to neatly join up. I might have a purple tree next, maybe planted here. And actually into this purple I'm going to mix some of that brown that we had earlier. The burnt sienna. And actually if you mix this burnt sienna with the French ultramarine, you get these lovely greys. So I might do that, turn it from blue to brown to grey. My daughter's just arrived. This is the hazard of painting at home. Is it right, Elizabeth? She's gone. I did tell them that I was painting in here, but that was at least 3.5 minutes ago and she's forgotten. Still, it's probably better than being interrupted by the very noisy coffee machine. Some things are better and some things are worse. So there's that tree coming in. right up into the... And on top of that, I think I'm going to get a little brush and do some splattering. So get nice and watery onto the brush, tap, 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 tap. There's some purple. Purple at the bottom here. And that's probably enough for that layer. What I'm going to do is let that dry. And when it's dry, I can peel the masking fluid off and we can do our final layer of trees on top. There we go. And then leave that to dry. Another cup of tea, another gin and tonic. So once your painting is dry, you want to peel off the masking fluid. Now do that with the soft part of your hand and just be quite brave and rub. And you can see it just should peel straight off. If it's tearing the paper, then it's probably that your paper is still damp. So make sure you leave it till your paper is dry. The other thing that can happen is if you've had the masking fluid on your paper for too long and it's got hot, so for example if you paint in a conservatory or leave it in front of a hot window, it can stick to the paper. They're the two most common things that happen. Wet paper, or you've let it get warm and sort of it goes gluey and sticks into the paper. We're going to paint some more trees, and this time we're going to layer them on top of all this lovely white space we've got. So this one's going to be a very, very dark tree. And I use this nice white space I've got for putting some branches across. Bring it up, maybe add some blue. Lift, press on and lift off. And this should go over the top of the white tree layer. So we've almost got 3 layers of trees. The ones that are going to look furthest away are the dark ones we painted first. Then we've got the white layer of trees, which are going to look like they're sitting in the middle of the distance. And then we've got these bigger, dark ones on top. And I quite like that it kind of makes your eye kind of flit forwards and backwards and gives the illusion of a really thick, dense forest. And really all we've got is 3 layers. But we've also got this layer of scrunchy texture, which is quite important. Have some of these branches cutting across. And even just with that tree, that's already starting to look like a lovely forest pattern. And maybe we'll have another similarly dark tree on this side, shall we? Maybe starting here. And I'm not worrying too much about where it crosses over the existing trees. Trees don't stand politely to one side to let each other have space. These are trees that are growing in a forest, one in front of the other, crossing, overlapping, touching, all fighting for space. So, no polite British trees queuing with 2 meters between them. They don't know how to social distance. So back down into my trunk, make sure my trunk is wider than my tree. maybe some of these branches can cut across. And these ones can cut across here. And again, I'm going to take my little brush and I'm just going to splatter another layer of splats. Now, you might have noticed that my owls are a little bit scratty. So at this point, I can start to neaten up my owls a little bit and make sure that they look right. So let's get some. This one looks like he's slightly lost his shape. What you can do is very carefully go round the edge of the owls. There we go. Okay. And then with just a bit of water, I'm just going to wash that line away so that we don't see it. Wash it into the background. And we should be able to get rid of it. We should just have an owl silhouette left. And then that one looks alright, and then that one down here looks like he could do with a little bit of TLC. So let's go round the top of him and over the top of his wings and just wash that line away. And then the same with that on the bottom of the owl. Let's just define his tail a little bit more, and his legs. And again, with water, just wash that away so you can't see it. Might do a few more branches. Do another little tree up here. At this point, you kind of need to look at your own picture and work out where you've got gaps, where you think you might need a bit more, because everyone's picture starts looking quite different at this stage. And what one painting needs might be quite different from what another painting needs. So I'm just going to put some more little branches in here. And then really, I'm starting to think that's nearly finished, or I'm going to start overdoing it. All I need to do now is put a bit of colour on the moon and colour in my owls. Again, I might want to neaten up my moon. Let's just put some dark underneath it, and then with water wash away. So we leave a nice clear white moon to start with. And then I'm going to go into my yellow. This time it's a bit of cadmium yellow, I think. And I'm just going to suggest that that's a yellow moon. And the same with my owls. I'm just going to touch them with some yellow. Touch them. Maybe add a little bit to these trees. And there we go, I think that's finished. I can show you what it would look like with a mat. And there we go. Thank you very much.